Does Mob know that Reigen is lying to him? This is the topic that immediately captured my attention about Mob Psycho 100. After watching season 1 of the anime, I asked my friend, when does Mob find out Reigen is lying to him? And she told me, not until the second to last chapter of the manga. So then I binge read the manga over the next 24 hours, and my life was changed forever. But that's another video. What I want to talk about now is the conflict between Mob and Reigen because it goes so much deeper than a simple deception. There are a lot of different ways you can read Mob's reaction. You can argue that he was completely naive, or that he knew all along, or that he figured it out at some point along the way. This subjectivity makes Mob a really interesting main character because it's never quite clear what's going on in his head. I'm going to argue something a little more complicated than he knew or he didn't. I'm going to argue that Mob knew subconsciously that Reigen is lying to him, but had never really confronted it consciously. He had his suspicions about Reigen, but suppressed them. We all know that he's good at suppressing things, because it was too uncomfortable to think about. Mob says a lot of things that seem to confirm that he believes in Reigen, at least on the surface. When explaining Reigen to Tomei, he says his powers are spiritual, not psychic. And at the end of the first season, he says to Reigen, "Stand back, you're a spirit specialist." And during Separation Arc, when confronted with the idea that Reigen is a fraud, he says this is all part of his strategy. I don't think these comments can be explained other than showing that Mob, on some level, believes the bullshit. Especially when he says these things to his classmates when Reigen isn't even there. For comments to Reigen, you could argue that Mob is humoring him or sassing him, but when he defends Reigen in front of others, this shows both a desire to protect Reigen's reputation as well as to protect Mob's own feelings. He can't fully admit to the fact that he's being manipulated, even to himself. So keeping up this act is important. I think the sassier comments are mostly incidental. I don't think Mob is being passive-aggressive on purpose, but it does show that Mob picks up on the inconsistencies. After the scene with the vase, he says to Reigen, "Are you saying you couldn't see the spirit?" And he says to him a few times, most notably before Separation Arc, "Can't you handle this on your own?" Now, in the first chapter, he does say, "Are you really a psychic?" But I find it hard to believe that Mob is this completely aware of it given all the other evidence. And this line did not make it into the anime. The anime plays Mob a lot more naive. Mob's actions speak louder than his words, and this is where we see even clearer hints that he knows Reigen's a fraud on some level. In the tunnel, he saves Reigen's ass with a barrier, showing that he may not think Reigen is able to protect himself. When talking to Tomei, he says that he's never met another Esper, just completely forgetting about Reigen. This is so funny to me and really gives credence to the theory. Like, he just didn't even consider Reigen to be an Esper, and that slip-up reveals what he really thinks deep down. Separation Arc is really interesting and hard to decipher from Mob's perspective. He's confronted with the idea that Reigen is a fraud in the most direct way yet, and he just kind of ignores it. He rationalizes it away, saying that it's part of Reigen's strategy. Then he shows up to the press conference and makes a scene, effectively saving Reigen's reputation. I think at this point Mob knows for sure, but he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't really want to confront it. Reigen gives him the perfect chance to clear the air. He asks him, "Do you know what they've been saying about me?" Reigen was ready to come clean, but he was asking Mob to be the one to say it. This conversation could have never happened that way. Reigen had to be the one to say it. So Mob deflects and says that Reigen is a good person. In the manga, this line follows the flashback scene of how Mob and Reigen met, in which Reigen tells Mob that having psychic powers doesn't make him different from anyone else. All that matters is being a good person. So this line is definitely a callback to that, showing that Mob doesn't really care whether or not Reigen is a psychic. He's a good person, and that's all that matters. More on this later. The most important piece of evidence in this theory comes from chapter 100 of the manga, when Triple Question Mark sees Reigen, and he says to Mob, "Stop pretending like you haven't noticed. That person is a liar. That person is only trying to use me." So first of all, wig, I love this part so much. And it's really the only thing you need to support this theory. It confirms that somewhere deep in his subconscious, Mob knew that Reigen is lying to him and using him. He may have hinted at this before, but he's never said it this directly. And it also confirms that he has been pretending that he doesn't know and lying to himself about it. Mob argues with himself, "I can trust Master Reigen." And this is the crux of it. Mob met Reigen when he was 10 years old, and at that point it's pretty clear that he believes him wholeheartedly. Mob really needed someone with powers to look up to, an adult who proves that everything can be all right. As he grew up, he started to notice the inconsistencies, but he didn't consciously confront it. How can this good person, a person who cares about him and helps him, also be a person who lies to him? It's too much cognitive dissonance, especially for a child who doesn't have the most nuanced understanding of morality. This is also why it had to be Reigen to break the illusion. Mob was probably never going to confront him about it. When Reigen tells Mob, "I don't have powers," I don't think that Mob is surprised by this revelation, but he's surprised that Reigen told him. The act of Reigen telling him the truth is crucial, even if Mob already knew. At this point, I'm just going to start repeating my other video, so I'll wrap things up. Mob knew deep down that Reigen was lying to him, but he never confronted it because he couldn't reconcile good person with person who lies to me. Part of Mob's coming-of-age story is that he gains a more nuanced understanding of the world and of people. He learns to see that people aren't all good or all bad, and that includes his master, Reigen. Thanks for listening. I'm trying a new format here. Not that I've done a lot of videos, but I'm trying more of a podcast style thing with limited visuals because I think I should maybe follow some fair use laws, and also finding the visuals for every second just is really time consuming. So hope that this was enjoyable. Thanks for watching.